There's a stowaway on board, and it turns into a bloodbath. This is your look at the NECA Toys Alien 40th Anniversary, the Alien Bloody version. In a remote region of the galaxy, the United States space tug Nostromo, carrying a cargo of mineral ore, makes its return journey to Earth. The ship's crew, 5 men, 2 women, and a cat, are awakened from their hypersleep chambers when Mother, the onboard computer, monitors a strange transmission. According to company law, the crew must investigate any signal indicating possible intelligent life. What begins as a routine search mission quickly escalates into a nightmare of unimaginable terror when the crew discovers and brings aboard an extraterrestrial life form. Now, before we get a closer look at the bloodied version Alien, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the figure actually stands. Like with all the other Alien figure reviews we've been doing lately, I'd like to send out a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of the bloody version Alien that we're having a look at in this review. If you'd like to pick this one up for yourself, it should be available right now in retail stores and online stores as well. The Xenomorph in bloody version stands impressively at 9 inches exactly, and switching that to centimeters, then you're looking at the figure standing 22.8, almost 23 centimeters in height. Let's get in there some hopefully helpful size comparisons as we'll move over the bloodied version of the Alien and bring in his regular release, which we've already had a look at on this channel. Still one of my favorite Alien figures right now going. There's not really much that's changed between the two. You'll probably notice the biggest change is the coloring of the domes. Don't worry, we'll get a closer look at those in a second. Other figures that we can bring in, some of the other 40th anniversary releases. There's Ellen Ripley. We also have just recently looked at Brett, and also just recently also had a look at Parker. And you think of the fact that we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of Aliens, and how far now we've come when it comes to figure releases. NECA Toys continues to support and churn out some incredible looking Alien figures. I mean, these are some of the best that we've gotten. And finally, when you really think about it, we're finally now getting a Parker, a Brett. We're going to be getting ourselves an Ash. Like I said, it is a really good time to be an Alien fan. I'm loving these releases produced by NECA Toys. Moving off the Nostromo crew for the time being, I wanted to really look and focus our efforts at comparing the two different Big Chaps. Because again, essentially, it's the exact same mold. Not much really does get changed, except for a drastic change with its dome. You'll really see the difference already before we get a closer look at it. And of course, with the bloodied version living up to its namesake, there's quite a bit of amount of blood that's been splattered across the torso as well as the hands of the Xenomorph. But of course, you guys are going to want to see a closer look, and I aim to please picking up the bloodied version Xenomorph and looking at it quite closely. Some people had mentioned that when they picked up the Big Chap that there were variations to the dome. And while I unfortunately can only really compare it to the one that I have, there's definitely a very big jump in change of color, where you can see that the bloodied version has more of that smoky dome along the top. Now, some people had said that their original Big Chap that they picked up had closer to this, and not the clear one that we looked at earlier in the review. I did like this one because it did allow the opportunity to see like the inner skeletal cavity of the way that the Xenomorph skull would have actually looked underneath that dome, where you could actually see the eye sockets as well as the nasal cavity. Here on the bloodied version, it's completely or almost completely hidden by this fog-filled interior. It looks like they probably have just airbrushed the inside of the dome so that you see a whole lot less of it. In this case, I do appreciate the fact that we do get the variations, because I kind of like this one for the fact that we see all the inside workings of the Xenomorph. But then on the other end of it, I also enjoy the fact that you get that more solid-looking dome. Because in the movie, I always like the idea that you didn't see as much the inside of the skull. So you kind of get the best of both worlds by having both in your collection. Now, again, I had heard from some individuals that their version of the Big Chap didn't have as much this clear dome, and perhaps maybe it was closer to this dome that we're seeing on the bloodied version. Other than that, I mean, the bodies don't change too much. You can obviously see the other big change on this one is the additional blood splattering that's across the torso, across the mouth, and even splattered across the top of the dome as well, where obviously the original Big Chap wouldn't have had that. The body, the mold, the arms, the legs, everything of the original release doesn't change at all when we have a look at this one right here. Again, it's just a different color change. Now, I, again, like the idea of having both in my collection because it gives me the opportunity to kind of get two distinct looks at xenomorphs. Might even consider the idea of trying to pick up another Big Chap that has closer to the smoke dome so that I have like 3 variations of essentially the exact same figure. So I'm going to move this one out of the way just because, again, we've done enough of a review of this, I felt, that we've already kind of looked at how they differ from one another. So I'm going to just move this one off to the camera, off to the side of the camera. And again, we'll focus more of the efforts on this one just because this is the newer release. I do like, again, the idea that the blood is splattered across this. This could easily, I mean, admittingly, this could easily be pulled off by somebody with a paintbrush, a little bit of red paint. You easily could go in there and just paint this one up. So technically, if you did get yourself the smoke-domed version of the Big Chap, you could pull off a similar designed look. But I always find myself, when it comes to painting things, I never know quite that line to stop at, where I feel like I want to keep adding more and more and more. I feel like in the case of the blood, this is just the right amount. I wouldn't have wanted to add anything more to it because I feel like it would be excessive after a while. Like it's got just the right amount where you could imagine the mouth would have opened up, the inner jaw and inner mouth would have come out, punctured into somebody's skull, and then the blood naturally would have splattered across the dome. And I feel like, again, you get just the right amount of it. Too much blood splatter, especially around the dome, I think would have pulled too much away from the figure. In the places where you would imagine blood would splatter, like the chest area, for example, like the arms, and specifically around the hands as well, because you got to imagine the xenomorph is holding on to its victim with its hands like this. It punctures the head, and then basically everything in this area is going to get a good dolloping of blood. So I like it's only in these areas. There are a few little drops of blood that, of course, are going to make its way down to its legs, but that's only from anything that's dripping down from the victim. And I don't feel, again, like they've added too much of it, that it pulls and detracts too much away from the figure itself. A really nice touch, though, that NECA did is if you spin around the back of the figure, there's no blood at all, anywhere, from head to toe. I mean, yes, there's a little bit on the tail. I see like there's like one little drop right there. But all the rest of its back remains generally left clean, really. And again, it makes more sense. If he's attacking and killing from the front, blood is not really going to ricochet off of anything and find its way to the back of the figure. So then again, it makes perfect sense that they've kept this relatively clean. Despite the fact it doesn't have the blood onto it, it still has additional paint. Now, the figure plastic likely would have been the majority of what the figure's looking like right now, so it's this dark black plastic. But then what they've done, like they've done with the other release of Big Chap, is that they've brushed onto it this almost chocolate brown color. And it just adds a little bit of extra depth. Not that the sculpt would have sacrificed if it was just simply the black plastic, but adding that additional much-needed brown just adds a little contrast to it. Not to mention the fact that they added this clear coat, which you can really see it on the surface of the plastic. It really does give it that wet, slick, mucusy look that he has in the movie. Even the blood itself looks still wet, so it looks like it just literally made impact and splattered again across the surface of its body. I've noticed on this particular one, unlike the other Big Chap, this inner mouth, which is always something that normally is an issue for me to try to get out of its mouth, it was a lot easier, I noticed, on this release. Now, I don't know if it's just the case that they've used this mold so often that the jaw just was a lot easier to come out, but I did notice that this was a lot easier to remove. And of course, when it comes to displaying the figure, unlike the Big Chap where I generally like to keep the mouth closed and I can still see the teeth quite clearly, I think in the case of the bloodied version, I much rather prefer instead having the smaller mouth actually sticking out, so it looks like it just literally killed whatever was in front of it. Looking at the poseability on the bloodied xenomorph, it would be the exact same. After all, they're using the same mold as the original Big Chap that we had a look at. And that is the fact that it does have the ball joint, so you can move the head quite easily back and forth. You can hinge it up, and you can also hinge it down. Sort of a fail-safe is what they've done here. These natural areas sculpted on the xenomorph design anyways sort of tells you that this is the place where you want to stop turning the head. It still has the problem that these tubes at the back of its chin run all the way back to the back of the torso and connect right there. When you get beyond this point, and again, this is the point of no return, you'll notice these tubes become really too tight. Tight to the point where you feel like you're going to be breaking these off, either here or along the back. So I guess the good rule of thumb is when you're turning the head, stop it when you get to these points right here. Don't want to turn the head beyond that point, because then that's where you run the risk that that breaks. The mouth, of course, opens and closes, and inside, then again, we've got that smaller mouth, of course, very famous by the xenomorphs. Just close that back up. For its arms hinge out. Now, I can't quite get this at a full 90-degree angle bend. A lot of the contributing factors could be the fact that it's got the larger socket. The way it's been sculpted at the top of the shoulder almost kind of makes it limited. Then you can only get it to about there. It's not quite a 90-degree angle bend. It's almost kind of more closer to like an 80-degree angle bend. You can move the arms forward. You can move the arms back. He does have a double hinge on the elbow, so that's a nice touch. I'm glad to see that they included that. You can also rotate the hand all the way around, just like that, and hinge it back and forth as well. In addition to that, the upper torso is on a ball joint. I don't know if it's actually just me, but as I'm moving the figure, it feels slick to the touch. And I think a lot of it is just the fact that they added this coat, this clear coat, to the surface of the plastic. I almost feel like my fingers are slipping when I'm running my fingers across it. Anyways, though, the figure does have upper torso ball joint. You can see just how much you can actually move of it. In addition to that, the legs split out. You can get a full splits on a xenomorph, though you will not see it in the movie like this. And like the original xenomorph, the Big Chap that we looked at before, this bottom section, again, is all this soft plastic. So it has a little bit of give to it. You can move the legs forward. You can move the legs back. You can move the legs out. It does have a double hinge on the knee. There's one, and there's two right there. It does have articulation, of course, in the foot. Let me just move the tail out of the way there. It does have it to the point where you can move the foot forward. You can move the foot back. You can rock it back and forth. And you can also bend the toe, just like the original Big Chap that we looked at. And of course, there is always the tail. The tail is that wire frame. Good for bending and moving the tail into poses that you may want. And also good for the fact that in a way you also have that support on the back there, sort of serving as the back to a tripod. It allows some stability to this figure when it comes to him standing upright. Although most people probably won't be posing their Big Chap standing straight like this, you're probably going to be wanting to put in a little bit more of an interesting pose than one I've got it currently in right now. And once again, we'll just bring in the original Big Chap so you guys can see the difference between the two. I don't do too much posing when it comes to the xenomorphs, specifically these, because I know over time their joints tend to get a little on the loose side. But I did notice, comparing the two, even when I had them in hand, that the bloody version of the xenomorph happened to have tighter joints. I don't know why I feel the need to throw that in there, because it's probably only on a figure-to-figure basis. Mine happen to be a little bit tighter on the joints, which of course I welcome the idea of tight joints in these figures, especially on xenomorphs, because they tend to have not necessarily always loose joints, but again, depending on how much you pose them, will mean how loose these joints get over a matter of time. Still love the design of having both of these in my collection, even though, yes, they are using the exact same mold. It just goes to show again, just a slight tweak of color. You can take a figure that looks like this, and you can turn it into a really interesting, really gory figure that looks like over here. I mean, admittingly, if you already have the 40th anniversary Big Chap, there's not really much that gets changed with this release other than a few little cosmetic tweaks. Changing and slightly smoking up the dome as well as the saturation of blood across its body are the only things that you'll find different between this one and the original looked at 40th anniversary xenomorph. Now granted, I've heard from some individuals as well that their version of Big Chap also had a smoked dome. So it could be the case as well that there were variations, different versions of that Big Chap released, a second wave and a first wave essentially, and then there would be changes between the two. If you have yourself the version that has the more smokier dome, then yes, admittingly, the only thing that's different between yours and this one is the fact it has some additional blood. Anybody could have taken a paintbrush with a little bit of red paint and probably done a similar thing on their figure as well. But I leave that more to the skilled hands of NECA Toys. If I decided to do that for myself, I would find myself probably adding way too much blood, and I would probably ruin the figure. I think they added just the right amount in just the right places where the point of impact would have occurred. When that smaller mouth comes out and it makes impact, the blood, of course, would only be across its torso and anything in that area. Places like its tail, the back of the figure, for example, would be still pretty clean. So I appreciate the fact that NECA Toys, a care to detail, left the whole back side of the Xenomorph still relatively unbloodied. A nice touch on their part. Admittingly, yes, again, this is pretty much the exact same figure that we had gotten before, just with a slight tweaking of blood, but I welcome that. And I say you could do that more often if you want to. Give us different versions of figures that we already have in our collection and just change them up. Give them quote-unquote battle damage. In this case of the Xenomorph, it's not so much his battle damage that we should be worried about. It's the damage of whatever's been splattered across his body, the remains of some body he's left inside of a hanger or whatnot. I definitely think this figure turned out really good, even though it's utilizing the exact same mold we looked at before. Let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of the bloody version of the alien, whether you've picked it up for yourself, and also let me know when it came to the Big Chap 40th anniversary release. Were you one that got the clear dome like the one I had looked at, or did you get yourself a smokier dome closer to what we're looking at here with the bloodied version alien? Always like reading your comments down below. Also, a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of the bloody alien that we had a look at in this review. If you are new to the channel and liking the content you're seeing, and let's just say, for some reason or another, you get that sidetracked, you're doing other things, mom or dad got you on a chore list, maybe you haven't had a chance to hit that subscribe button down below. Do that right now. Make sure that you hit the bell notification as well, as you're guaranteed that when new videos are coming onto this channel, you won't be the person that's missing out. But just also know that Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when new videos will be popping up. Instead of the one video a week that you may expect to see, here on this channel, you're getting 10 videos a week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, even Friday as well. 2 videos a day. Lots of stuff coming your way, guys, so keep your peepers peeled to this channel. Lots of NECA reviews lined up and coming your way as always. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.